Hello, welcome back to The Daily Solve. This is an unusual and I think fairly special recording. I'm going to be solving a cryptic crossword, as you can see on the screen. You can see I've already run up almost 7 minutes on the clock. But what makes this particularly special is that the puzzle's setter, Dean Mayer, is actually here with me via audio. So hello, Dean.
Hello there, Chris. Hello, everybody. And Chris, thank you so much for accepting my suggestion that we could solve this together, because I watched one of your YouTube videos, the only cryptic one I've watched so far. I have binged on the US puzzles that you've been solving, and you do know something about cryptic crosswords, and I just thought it would be nice to bring a setter in and kind of say, yeah, you're doing the right thing, and here's other things to look out for. So I'm hoping this will be a lot of fun.
I hope so too. It'll be a bit of an experiment, I think, from maybe both of our standpoints. And I think, yeah, it's right to say I know something about cryptic crosswords. Maybe not very much, but enough to enjoy them, certainly, and to want to improve, which is maybe something that this video will help other people do, possibly. I hope so. So you are an extremely experienced crossword setter. You're one of three rotating setters of the Sunday Times Cryptic.
Yes,
this is
right.
This is the Times of London, as it's known in the U.S. But yes, you're one of three rotating setters of this particular puzzle.
Yeah, it's funny. There's a lot of people equate the Sunday Times with the Times. Business-wise, they're almost completely separate entities, to be honest. But yes, the Sunday Times used to be set by a sadly recently departed lady called Barbara Hall. She retired 15, 20 years ago, something like that. And when the new puzzles editor, Pete Biddlecombe, came on board, he decided he wanted to have a rotation of setters. So he brought in myself. There was Don Manley, a guy called Jeff Pierce. Subsequently, Don moved on to the Mephisto, which is the barred crossword that we have on a Sunday. Jeff Pierce, I'm not quite sure where Jeff went, but there's now myself, David McLean, and Robert Price. So it's us three working in rotation now.
Great. And how long have you been setting crosswords? I mean, it's been quite some time, I gather.
You would call me a liar, Chris. My first interest in crosswords came at the age of about 5 or 6 years old. And crosswords were never a thing in the family. But when my mum brought my brother and I over to England from Canada, we lived with an aunt in Manchester for a while. And she was a little bit of a crossword fiend, but to the extent that she had a book of definition crosswords. And I just watched over her shoulder as she was solving, and something clicked. I understood what was going on. And yes, that's been me ever since.
Wow. I think the purpose of this video is both to get insights from you about the construction of various clues, and maybe what goes into setting one of these crosswords. Also, I think in a more practical and mundane sense, I will be needing some pushes here and there to progress, I suspect. We'll have to see how it goes.
Well, the way that it generally works, Chris, with a cryptic crossword is that you'll look at here 1 across, then 6 across, and 9 and 10 and 11 and 12. And you're thinking, I'm not going to get anywhere here. But as you go through those clues, eventually something is going to spark an idea.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that's where you start to develop your fill.
Yep. On that note of how to solve cryptic clues, it's probably worth. There is a baseline bit of convention that you really do need to know to even begin attempting a cryptic crossword, and that is that each clue consists of two. Well, most clues, almost all clues, consist of two parts: a definition and the rest of the clue, which is what's called wordplay generally. And the definition is a standard definition. It'll be some kind of synonym, or it will be describing the answer in some way. And it is relatively straightforward in that regard, although sometimes less straightforward. And it tends to come at the beginning or the end of the clue. And so when I look at 1 across, without necessarily attempting to parse it just yet, it looks to me like the definition could be egg. It could be egg producers, could potentially be legislation, I mean, you could say it could be, oh, well, it could be avoid legislation. It could be, but that doesn't really sound like a definition to me. So most likely, the definition of this clue will be the beginning or the end of it, and then the remaining words will comprise the wordplay, and the wordplay means we're going to create the components, the individual sort of semantic, the components, the letters that make up the answer through all sorts of mechanisms, be that finding synonyms of words, abbreviations of them, anagrams of them, reversals, any number of other mechanisms that I'm sure we will encounter all of over the course of this puzzle.
And remember also that cryptic clues, if you're using that principle of definition either at the beginning or the end, then there's no guarantee that one will stand out from the other as being a potential definition. So if you can't make your mind up, have a look at the clue and look for any words which may suggest wordplay. It could be an anagram. So you might have words like broken or smashed or wrong. Mm-hmm. It might be a reversal, like the other way or backwards, anything like that. It's not just spotting those indicators, but you can also use grammar and syntax to use those indicators to point to the most likely end of the clue for your definition. For a wordplay indicator grammatically has to match the position of what we call the fodder, what it's actually referring to. Mm. So that's the other tactic to use.
That's a good point. Shall I start trying to solve some of these clues and see how far we can
Yes.
get? Okay, yeah. So when I look at one across, I don't really have, it was my example here because it was the first clue, but I don't have a strong sense of it. I mean, the very, very first thing that comes to mind is that egg producers could be hens, but then I see a void. If egg producers were hens, that would mean a void would have to make up the other 5 letters of the answer, and the definition would be legislation. And that doesn't really add up to anything to me right this moment. So I'm going to move on for now, and we'll come back to it. Like Dean said, I might just keep going until I find something that looks a bit more promising to me by instinct. So here we have 6 across, opportunity to welcome new supporters. So when I see this, the first thing that comes to mind is that new is often abbreviated N in cryptic crossword wordplay. I mean, not specifically because of cryptic crosswords, but because new can be, generally speaking, abbreviated as N. Thus, it is often done so in crosswords. And when I see welcome, it looks like an insertion. So if I just had to take a stab at what's going on in this clue, even though I don't have the answer yet, it looks to me like a word meaning opportunity is going to, a 4-letter word meaning opportunity is going to have the letter N inserted inside of it. That's what that looks like to me. But that may well not be correct. It's just that's what comes to mind when I see it. And
so if you're having that train of thought right now, you know that in your mind you've seen the word supporter and you're thinking, okay, that looks like it may well be the definition. Can I think of a word for a supporter which has the letter N inside it somewhere?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think I have come to the answer. I suspect the answer to this clue is donor. And so what's going on here is I think basically what I said, which is that in this case we have opportunity, and opportunity is being we have a sort of metaphorical opportunity in the sense of people often describe a door opening as an opportunity. So here opportunity is door. That's welcoming the letter N, and we're creating a supporter, which is a donor. And as Dean said, trying to think of synonyms for what you suspect the definition might be that fit the bits of the wordplay you have in mind, that probably that's easier than if I necessarily was just thinking straight from supporter to donor. So let's see if we can make any progress on these crosses here. So fixed penalties following case of damage. Okay, so the first thing I think when I see this, and I'm well aware that every time I say something like this could end up being wrong in this particular instance, but when I see case of damage, it looks to me like that is DE, which is sort of the case of the word damage. If you imagined the kind of exterior of the word damage is the letters DE. And that
Were
looks...
were you telling me in Discord, Chris, that you've not done many cryptics?
Well, I've done the listener every week since about February of this year. So that's one a week. And then I was doing the Times quick cryptic every few days, not religiously. And I've recently been trying to do the regular Times cryptic, which I do find a bit more of a challenge.
But you are finding things in these clues. I know some solvers who've been solving the Times or other crosswords for 10, 15 years, and they still get caught out by the kind of thing that you're spotting straight away. So
Interesting.
You're a magician of some type, not quite sure what.
It doesn't feel that way when I'm just sitting around solving one. So I'll take that gladly. So anyway, that I don't actually have a guess yet as to the actual. I'm going to put that in just to help me sort of, see if I can visualize something more from it. So what that
the thing is, before you go any further, then Chris. Yeah. So you've identified case of damage. However, you've got case of damage at the end of the clue, but the start of the answer.
Absolutely.
But that's confirmed because, as you pointed out, you have the word following.
Yes.
So now you only have fixes and penalties to work out. Well, fixes has to be the definition to the answer because it's at the start of the clue now.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly
right. So you have to work.
So let's see if I can...
if you can find a word for penalties.
Yeah. Fixes, penalties. I mean, fixes could be... I mean, so the way it looks in the surface read, fixes, penalties following case of damage is sort of, put a penalty into practice or apply a penalty, something like that, which makes me wonder if the actual definition is something like fix. I mean, it could be repair, or it could even be fix, meaning, fix a pet, sort of spay or neuter a pet, something like that. And D that actually could be with D. I mean, you could D what an animal. I'm not actually sure. So penalties probably ends with an S.
The one thing you do know, Chris, and you do this on the American puzzles quite a bit, is we now have in that clue fixes and penalties.
Yeah, absolutely.
Two plurals,
so, exactly.
But two plural forms, if you like. Yes,
exactly
that's your
right.
next
So
move.
we're going to end with an S. Yeah, that's exactly right. So, I'm just not seeing it. That's so frustrating. I don't know. I'm going to move on because I'll just be annoyed at myself.
Yeah.
What do we have here? Find right area and lines around it. So, okay. Once again, these starting letters are just so incredibly useful because they give you bits of the answer that you can potentially correspond to wordplay. So the first thing that comes to mind when I see this is that right is often abbreviated R, again, in life as it is in cryptics. And so this right is very well positioned in that respect because if find were the definition, then the first thing in the wordplay would be right, which is the letter R, which could very well be the case. Area is often abbreviated A for area if you imagine it sort of a geometric sense. Oh, although actually, now that I see that, so find right area and lines around it. So that could be an A here and then 4 letters that add up to and lines around it, but it could also be an A somewhere else and then something meaning lines around it. Or, no, I was going to say that could be the word and. No, that doesn't really make sense.
Have you seen lines in a cryptic crossword before?
Okay, actually, yeah. This didn't come to mind until you drew my attention to it. Lines can sometimes be railway. Railway, which can be
the common map abbreviation for that.
Yeah, it could be RY. So that's a very good point. Find right area and lines around it.
So what you could do here is your initial idea of the...
Oh, no, I got it. Yeah, I'm just sort of... I just started sort of typing in the bits in order, and then that ended up being a word. So here we have rarity, which you could say it's a real find. It's a rarity. So that... Sorry, I interrupted you.
No, sorry, because I was enjoying that little explanation. But I just wanted to add one thing here, and it's something I love doing as a cryptic setter, is giving the solvers the answer to something without changing it. In this case, it's the word it. It's not disguised in any way at all.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, absolutely. I really enjoy that as a solver as well. You'll often get that with the letter A as well, because it's such an inconspicuous word. It seems like it's nothing, but it can actually be an important part of a clue. And yes, exactly right. Here we have, I started sort of just typing this out as in the order in the clue, and then I ended up kind of getting close enough to the answer that it started making sense. But here we essentially have find being the definition, and then right, and then area, just exactly in the order they are in the clue, RA, and then lines, railway, around the word it. And that's that. It's the thing about crosswords that I think is so tricky when you're starting them is that things like this can seem so obvious in retrospect, but not at all obvious when you start solving the clue.
That's the whole purpose of surface reading.
Absolutely.
The idea is with surface reading, and not all setters go for the same thing. And the reason why we don't all go for the same thing is that not all solvers are that interested in surface reading. You know, some solvers want very easy clues, some want very complex. Everybody's different. But the surface reading, as long as that tells a story which has nothing to do with the answer,
right,
then it's worked. That's what the surface is designed to do, is to deceive you.
It's sort of like an extended version. I always talk about in the New York Times crossword, getting out of sort of falling into one sense of a word and thinking, well, it doesn't just need to be a noun. It could be an adjective. It could be a verb in English. It could be all these different things. It's all the more important in solving crosswords because the surface reading, as Dean, you were saying, is intentionally pointing you towards a particular sense of a word, and you have to get out of that one often in order to solve it successfully.
Suspect everything.
Yeah, exactly. So what do we have here for 10 across? Busy as one caught interrupting supply. My very first thought when I see busy as one is I think of a bee, busy as a bee, or a beaver, I guess, busy beaver.
Well, that's going to raise an interesting subject, which I'll come to. Well, you might not get the clue, but at some point I will just describe something for you here.
Yeah. I don't think either of those, well, certainly neither of those is the definition. I'm not sure if either of them is is an important part of the wordplay either, but beaver certainly, I would think, isn't, because it's already 6 letters long, so there's only 1 letter left at that point. So I don't think so. What am I doing here? So one could be okay. This is just an important thing to note in general, regardless of whether it relates to this puzzle. One is very often I for the Roman numeral 1, or I've always wondered, is it the Roman numeral 1 or is it the kind of third person sort of personal pronoun 1, as in one?
No, it is the Roman numeral.
It is the Roman numeral. Okay, I was never.
I mean, we have the royal we. One is delighted to.
Exactly.
Yes.
Yeah.
But except that it doesn't work.
Fair enough. Okay, so I do suspect this will have a 1. Caught, I think is C. Is that a cricket abbreviation?
It certainly is. Gets used quite a bit. It's a cricketing reference.
Yeah.
So you'll find C for caught, B for bowled, O for over,
R for runs.
Run or runs.
Yeah. So I think there's going to be an IC interrupting something meaning supply. That's what it looks like when I see this. Okay, and I think I know what this is, and it's extremely. This is something that I think would be tough to get if you don't have kind of British lingo knowledge. I think the answer.
You're onto it. I can tell you've got it.
Yeah, I think the answer is officer. So a busy is a kind of British slang way to refer to a police officer, which is not something I've ever heard in the U.S. So that's not necessarily apparent. And a supply of, to supply something could be to offer it to something. So here we have to somebody or what have you. So here we have one caught, I see, interrupting a supply, an offer. And we have a busy, an officer.
Now, does that help you with 6 down?
Yeah, it's a good question. So fixes penalties following case of damage, right? Okay, I have to remind myself what this was. So we had the case of damage is DE and then penalties. Fangs? Defangs? I mean, sometimes, financial regulation is described as sort of fangs in that sense, but it's not really penalties per se.
So where can penalties be applied?
Well, I mean, a football match, or again, in a financial context. Oh, fines. It is a financial thing. Fixes,
There
defines.
you go.
Yes, that'll be it. Yep. So a penalty, exactly. And again, that kind of sort of hypothetical question, where could a penalty be applied, or whatever it was you said. I mean, that's the kind of thing you have to constantly be doing, asking yourself in your own head. At least that is certainly what I find to be the case. So here we have penalties being fines. They're following the case of damage that DE as explained before. And we have fixes. In this case, meaning fixes a set of parameters. You define a set of parameters, that kind of thing.
To make absolutely clear what something is.
Exactly. Yeah, I think that's correct. So this I'm not suspecting I'll be able to get quickly. These very long answers I find.
Well, you say that you might not be able to,
Yeah.
Chris. Now, here's the great thing with when you've got a long answer like this, and you think, oh my word, 15 letters. Yeah, okay, it's 3 words, but that's still a lot of letters. Just have a look at the first word. It's N something C, and it's got 7 letters. How many 7-letter words can you think of with that pattern?
I don't know. Nectars, which is clearly not the answer. Now that you've put me on the spot, you've guaranteed I won't be able to arrive at the solution.
Okay, so here is the approach here.
Yeah.
So as a regular solver, you would probably be latching on to that 7-letter word now.
Mm-hmm.
And what you would do is go back into the clue and see if there's anything that might point out what that is. So it starts with a place like Italy.
Yeah.
That sounds more like a definition to me than part of wordplay.
Well,
so
you set the puzzle.
If it was,
so I had the opposite reaction, which I suspect was the wrong one. Let's see, but go on. I want to hear what you were saying.
So it's still the same principle then.
Yeah.
What you need to do is look at that clue and see whether it's the start or the end of the clue, which is the better candidate as definition.
Yeah.
So working in cold snap is nonsense. Cold snap, yes.
Yeah, cold snap could very much.
So if you can think of a period of cold weather, but have a look at that answer. 7-44, and you're just looking something that's a cold snap. That doesn't seem.
Oh, I don't know. I think I might have to move on from this. I'm sorry. I'm going to look elsewhere if that's okay. So let's see. Here we have man about to chop a tree. Man about to chop a tree. This makes me think it's either going to involve somebody's name or.
Right. Okay. So for people who solve British UK cryptics, apart from 1 or 2 newspapers, which I think you might call them slightly looser, what we don't tend to do in the Times, Sunday Times, and Telegraph especially, is have arbitrary names.
Okay. The listener does that quite a bit.
If the clue had the word man,
trained by that. Yeah. Well, then my suspicion about this is that it's going to be a type of tree. It's going to be a type of wood or tree. Is my suspicion oak or elm or something like that? But I'm gonna look elsewhere for now. Let's look at 5 down. Exclusive small shop. Oh, this is interesting. There's very few words in this. So small is often S. So this could be. I mean, depending on whether exclusive or shop is the definition, we could have an S that's simply at the beginning or at the end.
So here's another tip for you, Chris.
Mm-hmm.
You're trying to decide where the S is.
Yeah.
Look at one across again. You have egg producers, which was one of the things that you were thinking possibility.
That is true. Yeah. Yeah. And I do think that's the more likely definition. Legislation. I mean, it's possible, I mean, it is legislation itself is a relatively long word, but I don't think there are very many synonyms of it that are similarly long. So I do suspect egg producers is going to be the definition, which would put an S here. So then, okay, right. So I see what this is. So we have exclusive small shop. So if this is indeed the S, and let's just imagine it is for now because I think it is, small often abbreviates to S, and then after that we have shop. There is, well, both a category of and in the UK a specific brand chain of shop called cooperative, and that adds up to make an exclusive. So if you think in the newspaper sense, an exclusive piece of information, a scoop, would be an exclusive. And of course, that is a related but different sense of the word than what you're getting in the surface reading.
I was wondering whether you tried to. No, sorry, I shouldn't do any spoilery stuff at all, Chris.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, so 12 across. I order parts for European to hang. I mean, you can hang a pennant, a sort of banner that could fit there. I could simply be the letter I. It could just start with I, for instance.
Now, so here's the thing. Okay, so you were thinking of having the letter I. Just put that in again.
Yep.
Because what I never do is discount something straight away.
Yeah, fair
With
enough.
that in place, can you think of a word that fits in there? Because I'm going to introduce you to a cryptic solving principle called biffing.
Biffing?
Biffing, B-I-F.
Biffing.
And
I don't know that one.
It's called bunging in first. If you can think of an answer that fits,
I mean,
try putting that in
yeah,
and then see if you can justify it with the wordplay.
I mean, it looks like the word independent could fit in here. I don't know what the definition of that would be. There's a newspaper called the I newspaper here in the UK. That's sort of a spin-off of another newspaper called the Independent. I have no idea if that's what this would be. I might just, yeah, as you say, I might just type this in and see. I order parts. I mean, order looks like an anagram indicator to me, but I don't see any. It doesn't seem in any way relevant to. I order parts for European hang. I mean, European is often E. There's several of those.
Yes, there are three. But, okay, so it looks like E must be followed by some kind of definition.
Oops.
So if it was that E, well, you have pen, you have penned. But if it was the second E, you've got NDE, that doesn't mean anything. And if it's the third E, NT doesn't mean anything.
Which doesn't mean anything, at least in the context of this clue. Yeah, that penned is it right. So hang could be penned. If something is hanging, it's pending. I mean,
yeah,
that's possible. So
so what does that leave you with? If you were to just remove the
I
E
see.
and the penned.
Indent. That leaves you with the word indent. Now, what is going on there? I'm finding this clue very challenging.
Solved by far the most difficult clue in the puzzle.
Yeah, I mean, I'm finding it incredibly opaque. Right. So we have European to hang, E-penned, and that's been inserted into indent or in and then dent. I mean, those could be two different things. Order.
So can you find the word in the clue which means indent?
I don't think I can. This is very embarrassing.
No, it's okay, because you were looking at I for independent, weren't you? Which is why you put that first letter in.
Yeah.
You found European to hang.
Yeah.
Then all that you've got left now to satisfy indent is order parts for. But you've identified order as indent, haven't you?
I hadn't. I don't actually understand why that's order.
To indent somebody, to to put them within an order to go through an indenture.
Right. Okay. Yes, I completely missed that. So what is the sort of insertion thing here? So order, indent, parts for. Oh my. That's very clever. That was extremely well hidden. I see. It parts as in, parting the Red Sea or
Separate.
something like that. Yes.
Yeah.
It parts the actual word indent for European to hang, for e-penned. Wow, that was tough. I found that extremely difficult, and I needed some nudging. So I can.
And just as a point of interest here,
Mhm.
I for independent has been used a lot, but it's not actually the newspaper. It's
Mm.
the I or the independent. However, it is a lowercase I, so
Yes, of
you
course.
couldn't
Yeah.
use it for this.
Oh,
But
interesting.
it does mean
Even though it's the
independent in the
first,
political sense.
even though it's the first letter of the clue.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay, that's good to know. Right. So here we're just sort of blowing out I to be independent, which is funny because I've often seen that go the other way in cryptic clues.
Yeah.
Independent will collapse down to I. This is sort of an inversion there, blowing it out in the other direction.
For example, if the clue started with as,
Mm-hmm.
AS,
Mm-hmm.
you may find that the answer is arsenic. Then you
Right.
might have he or I, for example, and
Mm-hmm.
the answer would be elements.
There you go. Right. Very
So
good.
this is kind of reversing the idea of using an abbreviation within the clue as the answer to the full version. We're
Mm-hmm.
kind of just switching that on its head here.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'll have to be on the lookout for that sort of thing, which is definitely more rare than the other way around. I'm going to skip this Italy thing for now. Okay, let's see.
Chris, don't
Yep.
go with
Yep.
your instinct here. You clicked on that down answer again.
No. Okay.
Ow, that 7-letter word.
Yeah.
What about NUC?
Nuclear?
Ah.
A nuclear winter or something like this? Is it a nuclear free zone? A place like Italy.
It looks right. It fits the enumeration, doesn't it? So that makes it a very strong candidate.
Yeah. Can I reverse engineer this back into what we're looking
Yeah,
at?
absolutely.
So a place like Italy can rule out working in cold snaps. So rule out. So the reason I'm looking at rule out is because working can often be an anagram indicator because we're sort of, if you imagine, sort of working, needing the letters in various words. So rule out looks like it can be spelled out. Oh, maybe not. No, there's no T. Never mind. That's completely wrong. Sorry. Can rule out working in cold snap.
So have you decided what you think the definition is?
Well, I think it's a place like Italy now.
Mm-hmm.
Because
I think it was
I suspect this is sort of a
1987?
I'm not sure offhand, but that's what I suspect this is referring to.
So if we can now remove a place like Italy, the clue.
Yeah. So
we're
left with the remainder of the wordplay would be can rule out working in cold snap. So I suspect there's the in, I suspect, is going to be insertion. So something inside of something else.
Okay, so here's a slight problem here.
Yeah.
You're seeing in as an insertion. That would mean that working or something that means working would have to go into that. But you looked at working and thought it was an anagram indicator.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it can't do both. And then what about out? Because if you're talking about working being an anagram.
Actually, sorry. Yeah, I think out is an anagram indicator. Can rule? Does can... Yeah, so can rule is an anagram. It looks like the first 7 letters here. All right, that it might just be nuclear in its totality.
So all you're left with now is working in cold snap.
Yeah, absolutely. So, boy, this is a way to feel like an idiot, is to do something at which you're no expert, along with the person who actually constructed the thing. Yeah.
Yeah, one thing you will come to see a lot in cryptic crosswords as your experience grows is working. Working is actually a definition for something, and you will see it a lot because it works.
I have
seen
it before, but I hadn't. It was right as you started pointing that out that I noticed it, which was so the cold snap is the freeze. So the meteorological event, a cold snap, a freeze, and then we have working inside of that, working just on. So if you just imagine, well, my computer's working, my computer's on, that kind of thing. There we go. All right. That took me quite a while. If I were solving this on my own, I probably would have just gone away and come back to this once I had more crosses.
And remember, you've only looked at about 25% of the clues so far, if that.
Yeah. So yeah, I see this, and it just makes me think elm, because that's a kind of tree, and M could be elm. I'm sorry. M could be man is what I'm thinking. And there is the word about can be used. Actually, I mean, really, it can be used to mean a few different things in wordplay, but one of the things it could mean is put this bit of wordplay sort of on one side of the other. So it could be the case that we have M about something that's the result of 2 chop A, I mean, or just some subset of that, and that leads to L, but why would that be the case?
This is one thing that is a little bit of an oddity with cryptic crosswords. About is a prime example of a wordplay indicator, which can actually a couple of different meanings.
Yeah, absolutely.
You've mentioned the surrounding, the container thing. It can also be an anagram indicator. Things were scattered about all over the place. It can also be a reversal. If you think about an about face, it's a turning.
Right.
So there are at least 3.
Yeah.
And of course, if it's in a clue, it could be referring to the letter C or CA for circa.
Yep, definitely.
And re as well on the subject of about.
Right.
Loads of possibilities.
Yeah, that's true. It is a particularly versatile bit of wordplay, but I don't think I know exactly what's going on here. So I'm going to delete that for now and come back to it. What about this? Distribute bread, rude person, delivered. Okay, the first thing that I think of when I see this is that to distribute things could be to something them out. So to dole out, or to mete out, or to pass out even, that's probably less likely, but that's the first thing that comes to mind. So in keeping with...
So go through your possibilities and just see if you can justify one of them.
Yeah, so dole out and mete out actually each end with an E, and I think those are the 2 most likely. So let's see if we can do that with one of these. So distribute bread, rude person, delivered. So bread, rude person, delivered could be out, potentially. As in...
No, I wouldn't say that out means delivered. If it's delivered, then it's not that, out. Out suggests that it's in transit. It's on the way.
Yeah, that's fair. I was thinking potentially in the sense of like a child or something, but you wouldn't necessarily say a child is out. But yeah,
baby's out.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit overly casual. Let's see. A rude person could be a lout, maybe. I don't know. Distribute. So bread, rude person, delivered. I mean, this could be some kind of... delivered could be a homophone indicator, maybe.
As in delivered speech.
Yeah. So this is a thing we haven't come upon yet in this puzzle. So homophones delivered, as Dean said, exactly, delivered a speech, said something aloud. That is sometimes a way to refer to a homophone. In other words, if you were to say something aloud, it would sound like other words that have completely different meanings, but are pronounced in the same manner. So is there a way that dole out could sound like bread, rude person? Well, like I say, a lout. Oh, so dough as in bread, as in money. Dough lout.
There you
Right,
go.
there we go. Dough lout. Bread, rude person. Okay, there we go. This is the kind of sort of there's often an element of sort of whimsy in cryptic crossword clue setting, and I think homophones are one of the more whimsical category of wordplay
One of
in
the big
cryptic
problems,
crosswords.
Chris, is the fact that despite the minuscule size of this nation, the
Yeah.
UK,
Yes.
we have literally
Yes.
hundreds of
Yeah.
different regional accents where
Yep.
dole out would never sound anything like dole out. I mean, it's like dole loot
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if you're
or something like that,
Scotland or
depending
something.
on
Yeah,
where you
yeah,
are.
absolutely. Yeah. You don't even need to go very far, really.
No.
I mean, you can get on a train from where I am, and in a couple hours you'll be in the West Country, and that's a completely different
And it's one of the
situation.
reasons why I do like to add, for a homophone clue especially, is a question mark, for example, at the end.
Right. Mm-hmm. To
Because depending
indicate
on
that
where
it's a
you
bit
are,
loose.
dough
Yeah.
lout may not sound like dole out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Okay, so that was fun. So let's see. It shows one's
Oh, and
ready.
the other
Oh,
thing that you
yeah.
experienced there,
Mm-hmm.
Chris, you experienced something. I don't know whether this is an abbreviation that you've ever used or seen before, but you could use it on cryptics. You could use it on the New York Times puzzles. It's called the PDM,
Yes,
which is the
absolutely.
penny drop
Yep.
moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay, what should I look at? What was this going to be? It shows one's ready to be taken home. Um, I have absolutely no idea if this is relevant at all, but because we just saw bread and dough, my brain is now immediately drawn to ready as potentially being money as well, which is that's another Britishism. So ready meaning ready cash. That's something that I've never seen in the U.S., but is not infrequently used in cryptic crosswords. I have no idea if that's relevant. I've barely even read the clue. So it shows one's ready to be taken home. I mean, the definition could be something like it shows one's ready or something, like it shows one is prepared, or could be home or taken home, or I guess ready to be taken home potentially. That's quite a lot of the clue at that point. Um, Not really sure, to be honest. I might just look elsewhere for the time being. So what about this one? Wild party. I will crack that code. I mean, there there's sort of a few things in here that themselves could be anagram indicators. I mean, wild could be anagramming party, or party could be anagramming wild, although it doesn't really make sense for wild to anagram party because this I here means there would be nowhere to put the 5 letters in party in sequence, although it could be party I, actually. Um, that
Well,
would
the
be,
one thing you can focus on here, Chris,
yeah.
is that you have the I of independent
Mm-hmm.
as part of that answer.
Yep.
In the clue, wild party, I will crack that code. Well, the I has to
Yeah, it
be
has to
there
come from
somewhere
somewhere.
because
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
it's not defining something.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is true. So it probably is simply that I. I mean, it could be from will as well, but I sort of doubt that. Because you could say, well, crack could be an anagram indicator of will, but you'd expect that to be cracked or something like that to indicate that it's, an operation that's been performed on the will. So yeah, it probably is this I. And what it looks like this is saying is I will crack in the sense of like the I will go into something else. I mean, that's how that reads to me at a glance. Um, so a wild party could be, a bash or a rave or something like that. That's the first thing that comes to mind to me. So I mean, I guess when I look at this, my instinct is that code is the definition.
So
Because
again, this
yeah,
is that principle I was talking about near the beginning of
yeah.
the video about
Mm-hmm.
if you can't say with certainty that beginning or end of the clue is the definition,
Mm-hmm.
have a look at the way that the grammar of the
Mm,
wordplay is operating. So if I will crack that code, well, if I, as you suggested, is going to be inserted in something, it would have to be going into that code. I can't think of any
that
word
is
that
very
would mean
odd.
that
Yeah,
code.
that's actually a really good point. So this is something that is worth drawing a special attention to. In a well-written cryptic clue, you won't have extraneous words. So if I were going into something that meant code directly, there wouldn't really be any reason for that to be there. So it could just say I will crack code. I mean, that's not very elegant to say. So you could have words inserted to sort of smooth over the surface read a bit, but there's probably a reason it's there. So yeah, I mean, Dean is right to draw attention to that. Well, it's also the person who wrote this, but it's an extremely good point in terms of solving cryptics generally speaking. So let's see.
So it's kind of it's, if you like, a back reference. You've got something which means wild party, and the letter I, is going to crack or open that up.
Yeah.
Which means that what you have left is something that must mean code.
As the definition. Yeah, I think that's
the other
right.
thing to look at, though, Chris, here is it's got wild party, but there's a question mark, and you were talking about a rave or a bash or something like that.
Yeah, but that's literally a wild party.
And if you see the word party in a clue, again, this is kind of knowledge that you just gain from experience of solving. A very short word meaning a party
is a do.
Yeah.
So if which is two letters, which would mean if I is cracking that in this case being wild party, and if party is do, which, as Dean says, is an extremely common way of it's common in British speech generally, so it's not specific to cryptic crosswords, but it is particularly common in cryptic crosswords because it's such a useful little two-letter sequence. So, wild, if you imagine in presumably this means in the sort of Australian sense, like the bush, a wild landscape, that kind of thing. Could be
Africa as well, I think.
Africa as well, sure, yeah. So bush, and then a party is a do. I will crack all of that, and we're left with a code, the Bushido code.
So the idea there is that wild party isn't supposed to be wild meaning bush and party meaning do.
Okay.
It just means you could imagine a bush do as being a party in the wild.
I see. Okay, very good.
So
very
you kind
clever. And that's
just
what
join
the
those
question
together
mark is
and give them
doing,
their own cryptic meaning.
Yeah, right. And so the question mark is doing that sort of whimsical cryptic definition work there, where it's saying, oh, what could a wild party be? Oh, a bush do. If you could imagine sort of saying it in that whimsical context, and that's what that question mark is doing. I tend to pay insufficient attention, I think, to question marks when I'm solving cryptic crosswords, and I need to put more emphasis on that. So, all right, let's see. What else can we look at? Did I ever look at this? Oh, right. This was the very first one. Egg producers avoid legislation. Well, legislation could be bills. If you're trying to pass a piece of legislation through a legislature of some sort, a parliament or whatever else, those could be bills.
Which means you have no choice at all
except for
but
avoid.
to look at the word avoid.
Yeah. Which, if you avoid something, you duck it. You get out of the way. We're left with duck bills as egg producers. So I'm fairly certain that's the answer to this one. Very good. So and that's also kind of fun because a duck, obviously in itself, just as a subset of duckbills. So duckbills are they platypuses? Is that what duckbills
yes,
are?
I think that's the nice thing. They're egg producers, but they're not birds.
But they're kind of these weird. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, are they mammals? What are platypus?
I think it's an aquatic mammal, isn't it?
It's something like that. But of course, a duck is also an egg producer, so it's kind of a funny, almost little it's sort of a microcosm of what's going on, being both a void and itself a duck producer. So it's just a funny allusion to the total definition. Okay, let's see. Does this give me anything? Takes one home and falls asleep. Takes one home. Well, again, one could be I. Takes one home and falls asleep. Okay, so I'm gonna, as I often do, I think I'm gonna jump straight to a potential definition of falls asleep, which in 2 words looks to me like it could be drops off. Oh yeah, it is. It is. This I think is actually a double definition, which I don't think we've had so far in this puzzle. So I think what's going on here is that we're defining the phrase drops off. There is no wordplay, and we simply have 2 instances of definition. And Dean, let me know if you disagree with my parsing of this.
I
think
right.
What's being said is if someone falls asleep, that person drops off. But also you can take someone home and drop them off at their home. So is that how you intended this to be read?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if we've got time at the end of this, there's a type of clue I'd like to talk about, and it does feature in this crossword. It's called the cryptic definition. I won't tell you where it is.
Those are I would say for me, those are the most challenging category typically.
They can be, but
well, for me,
the cryptic crossword in the UK,
yeah,
it's kind of split between 2 factions, if you like. They're not actually warring factions as such, but there's a libertarian style and there's a Zimmernian style. Yeah. And according to the Zimmernian purists, you can't have cryptic definition clues because Derek Somerset McNutt said, and he was known as Ximenes in his book, The Art of the Crossword, a cryptic clue must contain definition, wordplay, and nothing else. Well, of course, a cryptic definition clue doesn't have wordplay. But the reality is that that's a misinterpretation of what Ximenes was saying, because at that time, what he was addressing was the fact that a lot of cryptic crossword setters were having the definition in the clue, they put the wordplay in the clue, but they didn't match very well. And they tended to fill and pad the clue out with all kinds of extraneous wording. It was just irrelevant. And Ximenes wanted to remove that. And that's what the and nothing else referred to. But it's been misinterpreted by many. They believe that he was saying that every clue had to have definition and wordplay. It's not the case. It's just got to not have that extraneous stuff.
So let's look at this. 9 across. Love poetry by one abroad. Love poetry by one abroad. I mean, love poetry and one abroad are both pretty plausible definitions to me.
Except the problem is there, you've got to justify by, haven't you?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I was imagining by could be simply a linking word.
Well, if it's going to be a linking word, it has to mean something. It has to relate.
Fair enough. One thing that did come to mind, I don't know if this is relevant in this particular answer. Love can sometimes be just O, in the sense of love being a score of 0 in tennis, and 0 in turn being O. Let's see. Verse, V-E-R-S-E. Oh,
remember, this is not just a tip for you, Chris. This is a tip for anybody solving a cryptic crossword, especially if you have an interactive one where you can do it. If you have an idea, if you have a thought, type it in and see if you can make it work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, fair enough. So I'm just going to, this doesn't seem to add up, but I'm just going to type it in anyway. So love poetry, O verse by one. I mean, by one could just, oh, it does work. So one is A. So one of something, a thing, one thing, a thing, just one meaning.
You can take a toy with you. Yeah.
Exactly.
It's that kind of idea. It's that emphasized, it must be only one.
Mm-hmm. Exactly right. And so here we have abroad. If you're abroad, you're overseas. So there we go. Okay. So good. Great. Thank you for encouraging me to write in the thing that came to mind, because I may
Yeah,
not
but
have
I would
otherwise.
say that to anybody. If you
Yeah,
on an
absolutely.
interactive puzzle, that means you can afford to do it. If you just have a suspicion about something, it's a spark. It's I might be wrong. You never know.
Yep.
Well, type it in anyway, because you never know. You might be able to justify it.
So this, I think I can jump straight to the answer. New partner for Pete in plain Welsh town. Just because of the crosses I already have in the grid. So there are several Welsh towns, just because of the sort of conventions of the Welsh language. There are several Welsh towns that begin in this manner, Llan.
Yeah, clan.
Yeah, exactly. And one of them is Llandudno, which I'm sure I'm not pronouncing brilliantly, but
You are. It's Llandudno.
Llandudno. Now let's look at the wordplay and see if I can justify that. So new partner for Pete in plain Welsh town. So if Welsh town is not part of the wordplay, because the definition, we have new partner for Pete in plain. Yes. Okay. So here we have a plane in, what is it? Is it a South American thing?
I think so.
Llano. Lanyo, I think it'd be something like that.
It's South America, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I thought. So, and then so that explains the LLAN. Well, it could be either of these N's, depending on how the rest of the wordplay works out, and then this O. And we see that new partner for Pete is in plain. So new is often N. I think we've seen that elsewhere in the puzzle. And so that's this N. And then partner for Pete is dud. Now, why is that the case? Is this a reference I'm missing?
Well, Pete is capitalized in the clue, so it's not being deceptive. It's a little bit of history, really, entertainment history.
Okay.
You either heard of them at the time. Very, very popular in, I think, the 50s and 60s. Peter Cook and Dudley Moore.
Ah, okay. Dudley Moore, I'm certainly aware of. I don't know if I know Peter Cook. So I missed that one.
Peter Cook was, I would say, of that pairing, Peter Cook was the absolute comic genius. He was the one who he did a little monologue thing as one of their shows where he said, I decided to take up beekeeping, but I started small, just the one. But yes, absolutely fantastic. They were so funny.
Okay, well, I'll have
before my time. I've got to add.
Well, sure, yeah, fair enough. Good. Well, then, fortunately, I was able to work backwards to this from the other way around. But honestly, that's often how it goes in cryptics. So there we have it. We've solved that one. Let's move on. Let's see. Can I get this? A loyal following, always with me too. This sort of looks like it might start with for, just because a 3-letter word starting with F. For good measure?
Well, it fits, doesn't it?
It does fit. I'm trying to think why that would be the case. I mean, what's funny about that is that could be defined literally by just the word to.
Which is an even stronger reason to believe in it.
Yeah.
So again, the biffing process.
Yeah, for good measure. So a loyal following, always with me. Loyal could mean, a loyal could be a sure, because if you're a sort of loyal, adherent to, if you're loyal, you're sure. I mean, that could be the case.
Yeah, in the sense of sure, dependable, faithful.
Exactly right. So, and then me is right here. I'm sort of doing this backwards. Always is for good. If something happens, always. Oh, I see. It is a loyal following. In other words, coming after, always with me. Right. Okay. So this is one of those things that's sort of just the order in which things are happening is slightly. You just have to keep a few moving parts in your mind here. A loyal, which is a sure, that's following always with me. In other words, always for good with the word me simply being me as written, that all adds up to for good measure, which is defined simply by the single word to, which is very clever. When you get, I mean, this is great in that this long string of letters is defined by this almost meaningless, not meaningless, but almost insignificant little word to, and then the rest of it is this complex
as a
arrangement of
setter,
words.
as a setter, it's very satisfying when you can do that.
I'm sure.
The big problem with a long answer is that it wants to trend towards a long clue.
Mm-hmm.
And although many setters don't mind, my personal preference is to keep clues as concise as I can. And for some reason, that resonates with a lot of people. When you find, for example, don't try to solve it yet, but if you look at 19 down and it just says a beach's length, there's something intriguing about that. You want to know what the answer is. And you tend to feel that way more with short clues than long ones.
Yeah. I mean, the first thing
and the one that stands out even more is 2 down.
2 down. Let's look at that.
Again, it's a total of 15 letters in the answer.
Being
a very short clue.
Being a pleasure giver.
I'm not suggesting that you need to try to solve it now, but you have to admit, when you look at that clue,
it is enticing.
There's that thing in your brain that says, you know what, I want to know what the answer to this is.
Yeah. Is it creature comfort? It could be creature something, because a being is a creature. It doesn't really work with the rest of it.
Well, as a phrase, creature comfort would be the only thing. But is it definitely creature? There is a way of confirming that.
Right.
You could have a look at 11 across.
Yeah, that's a good point. And it's all, I usually, when I'm solving on my own, I usually would actually, even right from the very, very beginning of the puzzle, I would go straight to these short answers because they are pretty helpful. Take a little collector's item. Okay, I see what this is. So what's called a hidden word clue, which means we have a little collector's item, which means we're just taking a bit of the string of letters contained that is defined by collector's item. So we're literally spelling the word sit from inside collector's item. And I think what this means definitionally, if you, this is take an exam, you sit an exam. This
absolutely
is
correct.
Very British way of using that terminology.
And there's, so that's exactly the meaning. And there's also a tip which is given to budding setters, but it's also useful for solvers to know as well, is what we will try to do is, because we're being so generous and we're literally just putting the answer right there in your face in the clue, what we'll try to do is make sure that we change the pronunciation of those letters. So instead of sit, you have the kind of Z sound from collectors,
and
then
it,
which is different from it.
Yeah, that's a good point. I'd never actually that never been observed to me before. So that's really interesting. I will actually have to keep that in mind. It never occurred to me to think about that. So that
seems to be helping with creature, though.
Yeah, it does. I thought you were suggesting that because we were going to disprove. I thought you were suggesting we were going to disprove creature, but it has not been disproven. I mean, is it creature comfort?
because when you think about
it looks like to me. Yeah, being a pleasure
because
giver.
when you read that clue, you're, well, thankfully, you've kind of disproven it because you were on to me straight away. Because what I assumed is that most people would look at that and think being, yes, we have a verb form here, but you got onto the noun straight away. But as regards deception, that's all there is in the clue.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. So the whole thing is just a cryptic, and we were talking about the idea of cryptic definitions before. So it's a cryptic, it's a slightly whimsical way of defining the answer, creature comfort, and the entire clue is doing that work. But exactly as Dean said, it's doing it through misdirection, of course, and through kind of defining in an elliptical way. So let's look at this. Euphoric days at Wild Rave. Euphoric days at Wild Rave. Okay, this is 14 letters. I'm just going to do some counting for a moment. This makes me think euphoric days at is being anagrammed by way of the word wild. And the whole thing would then be a rave. Now, the next thing that makes me think is that the last word is party, because a rave is a kind of party. And now I'm going to do something incredibly obnoxious, and I apologize for this, but this is how I do this. Now I'm going this is such an absurd convention. There are better ways to do this if you're solving on paper, but if you're solving on a computer, this is what I've landed on. I'm fairly confident euphoric days at is going to anagram to the answer. So now I'm going to just type in using the pencil tool, the remaining letters that need to be anagrammed backwards. That's what I do to keep it from being too literally like what's already in the clue. So T A is already in there. S Y.
Oh, you know what? Here's another top tip here. Top tier from the man who knows everything.
Absolutely.
If you were to actually do this in a more manual way, ignore the C and the O, which are there. Just get rid of party from what you believe the anagram fodder is, because it will actually be easier for you to form those two words if you've still got the C and the O there.
Oh, that's what I'm trying to do. That is what I'm doing. I'm just typing them in. I'm just typing the remaining letters into the empty cells. I know this looks idiotic, but we need a U, we need an E. I don't have an H in there. Okay, I think these are the remaining letters. A rave could be acid at the beginning. Could be as a reference to the drug acid. So I'm gonna swap the S for an A. I know this is just interminably stupid, but I'm gonna swap the I for the S. That makes acid. Oh, acid house. Acid house party.
There you go.
Okay, I can only apologize for that ludicrous solving method, but that's what I've landed on doing these.
Chris, if it works.
Yeah, but that's really good. That's an impressive. That's a really good anagram. Euphoric days.
It is, I remember, an anagram is not an invention. A cryptic clue is not an invention. It's a discovery. As clue writers, we're not inventing new language. We're using what is already there. We're just finding a way of linking things together. So that anagram, euphoric days at, that was always there. You just had to, do whatever to draw it out, make it present itself.
And then I think the really important part is, and obviously you're the setter here, but I would imagine the part that probably takes work in a lot of cases is constructing a really elegant clue that doesn't belabor it or have a bunch of sort of excess words because the parts of speech don't fit or the tenses don't fit or something. I would imagine that kind of thing must be almost just as much work.
It can be. Now, I do have a piece of software called Anagram Artist by a guy called Mike Keith. For anybody who's interested, go to anagrammy.com, which is an anagram writing forum. A lot of fun, by the way. But Anagram Artist is a completely free, no strings attached. There's no pop-ups, no ads or anything like that. But it's an anagram tool. You can create anagrams. And it's fantastic. I try not to use it too much. I'll only use it if I get really desperate and can't find anything.
Sure.
And I'm just looking for a word that maybe ties in somehow with the answer. But yes.
Did you start off with one of when you're setting a crossword like this, did you come to it with something like Acid House Party and think, that's going to be a sort of headline entry in this puzzle and I'm going to construct it around it? These long ones, or not so much?
Not quite. It does go along those lines. This is a grid with 4 long connecting answers, 2 across and 2 down.
Mm-hmm.
And I try to get those in and clued first.
Right.
Because I'm always aware that, they're playing such a major role in connecting the 4 corners of the grid. But when you have long answers, anagrams tend to be that first port of call. And although on the Sunday Times we don't have a stated maximum number of anagrams, you do know when you're using too many. And if I was to have anagrams for all of those long answers,
Right.
first of all, it would bore the solvers to tears.
Yeah, sure.
But it will also restrict how many I can use elsewhere. So
right.
I do need to get those long answers, trying to look for alternatives for anagrams, cryptic definitions, anything that can be keeping the length of the clue minimized as much as possible. So yes, they go in first.
That makes complete sense. So let's look at another down. Let's see. TV awards put up with judges' agreement. Okay, so when I see TV award, I try and think of awards that could be given to a TV show. And I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is Emmy, which is an American TV award, but I suspect, reasonably well known globally.
You had an idea at 22, didn't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I thought it was maybe Elm, just purely based on the tree E thing.
Yeah,
and the fact
but you
that
were also thinking about Emmy.
M. Yeah, well, right. So I was wondering if, exactly, TV awards put up, if the Emmy could be put up in. Oh, right. So this could then be symmetry, maybe, which you could sort of describe visually as a form of agreement. Well, not just visually, but metaphorically as a form of agreement. If things agree, they're sort of if they're in agreement, they're in symmetry, you could say.
Yeah.
So then how does the rest of that work? So TV awards. Oh, so here's a thing that's worth pointing out, I think, about cryptic clues. Often, but not always, it could be either way. Punctuation is often superfluous. So TV awards put up. This could, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think this could read equally as either a single TV award that is put up, TV award is put up, or you could ignore the apostrophe, which I think is what's going on here, and we have TV awards, Emmys, put up. Is that fair interpretation?
The apostrophe does have to be justified, but you could apostrophize
okay.
Emmys.
Fair enough. I see. Okay, so but it does need to serve a function. Okay, that's good that I'm not spreading disinformation then. I'm being correct.
What we very often do is we try to, because the apostrophe has a couple of different roles. It can be the possessive, or it can be a shortening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And very often we'll try to exploit that by actually making it
the other
serve, not the function that you think. It's the other one.
Absolutely. And misdirection, of course, is just a cornerstone of this sort of thing, of cryptics. And then I've realized I hadn't looked at the rest of the clues. So here we have judge. Okay, so judge, to sort of judge a case or something, is to try it. Is that the sense you were going for here? Yep.
Yeah, correct.
And here's another case of the apostrophe S. So in this case, this apostrophe S is sort of being possessive of the entire phrase that comes before it. So this is all saying TV awards put up with judges agree. All of that is agreement. Is what's going on there.
But of course, it looks like judges is a possessive.
Exactly. It looks like judge. When I first looked at that, I thought this was going to be judges agreement. I thought it was going to be. I was glancing at this when we were looking at Acid House Party. I was glancing over at this 15 down, and I thought it was going to be something. I thought that was going to involve something a judge says or something like that. But no, that is the misdirection. So here, this does look like elm, but I'm still not quite sure I understand why. Man about to chop a tree. So man about...
And don't feel ashamed about this, Chris. There are because obviously this, like almost every cryptic crossword, gets blogged somewhere, whether it's 15 squared or whether it's Dave or the actual Times for the Times blog. Plenty of people will actually say in the comments, I put this one in, but I still don't understand it. Thanks for explaining. Because generally the blogger will have got it at some point. Mm-hmm. So there's nothing wrong with putting in a correct answer, even if you don't fully understand it. And I'll be happy to, if you still can't get it at the end of the puzzle, then I'll tell you what's going on.
Okay, well, we'll have to see. That may well be the case. What do we have here? I'm going to go past that one. Film, because I already looked at it and couldn't get anywhere. Film performers' needs after a walk in the park. Okay, well, this is something that I probably wouldn't have landed on without having a couple crosses. But when I see a walk in the park, That entire phrase, a walk in the park, is a way to say that something's easy. If something is a walk in the park, it is easy. And that's at the beginning of the answer, but that fits perfectly well because something here is going after a walk in the park. So film performers needs, film performer looks like actor, but that doesn't really fit anywhere in here. So film or film performer is going to be the definition. But there is a film called Easy Rider, and and a performer's needs are a rider. So if you imagine a sort of, a diva or some kind of high maintenance, rock star or something, they might have a rider that, who was it who famously had the brown M&Ms or whoever it was, that they would request in their rider, which means you have to have this ready for me when I
vaguely
arrive.
remember that story, and I can't remember who it was.
Yeah, it was the Rolling Stones or someone of that stature. It was someone like that. I can't remember. Probably wasn't the Rolling Stones, but yep. Anyway, that would be a writer. Film. That's very clever. Performers needs, and that's a great bit of misdirection because obviously film performer looks so much like a single unit, but in fact we're splitting that, and we have performers needs is in fact a single unit, which doesn't at first read look like performers needs would be defining a bit of the clue itself, but in fact it is.
So you know far more about cryptic crosswords than you've been letting on. I'm saying that now because you do know a lot of this stuff. So you knew PDM, another phrase that we use a lot in cryptic solving. I think you will have heard of it, but for the benefit of people not familiar, it's called lift and separate. Basically means take a phrase in the clue and see if you can split it into something else.
That's good. I only learned that phrase yesterday. So you say you expect me to know it, but it's actually complete coincidence that I do as of now. But I hadn't really thought of that expressly as a practice to sort of think over while parsing clues, and that's a very good point because that is so often how they work.
Oh yes, because the cryptic setter is always going to try to make something look natural when actually it isn't. You've got to take this part and say, right, part A actually doesn't have anything to do with part B. The setter's just trying to make it look that way.
Absolutely. So I'm just glancing at this one here. So Gulf Radio Host has material about alcoholic drink. Now, when I see alcoholic drink, I'm thinking of two different places that could have rum in it. I mean, this, like rum and Coke or something that obviously doesn't fit. Gulf Radio Host. Gulf Radio Host has material about alcoholic drink. I might come back to this when I have some more crosses because this looks complicated.
Well, just going back to that first principle that we talked about.
Yeah.
If Gulf Radio Host is the definition, we're in the UK, for heaven's sake. How is anybody going to be able to find the name of
that's a fair point.
Some guy on a radio in the Gulf of Oman or something? Yeah. So it just doesn't make it. That would be so unfair on Solver.
That's an absolutely fair point. I still think I'm going to come back to it, but yeah, that's a really good point. Is thinking about that cultural context and what is likely to be result of topless drinking bout. I'm going to come back to that as well. What about this? Oh, right. This is a beach's length. The thing that I keep wanting to put in here, I don't think this is the answer, but I keep wanting to put in a shore because it's just a beach, but a shore isn't a length. So I don't think that's anything. So I'm just going to keep pecking around for something that's a bit lower hanging fruit. Amateur construction to gather dry air. Can amateur be A? I don't really know.
Can't be sure, but I don't think we actually allow A for amateur.
Amateur construction.
I've never used it.
Yeah, no, it's fair enough. Well, that means it won't begin this clue. So
sorry.
That was a graciously veiled hint to me. Amateur construction to gather dry air. This is a really like classic cryptic clue. I mean, it's such a great It sort of typifies a cryptic surface read, which is just that you just know this is going to have nothing to do with the answer. That you could just, it's just palpable that the thing you're reading couldn't be less relevant to what the answer is, but you just do not know what the answer is quite yet. What about?
But I would give $100 to say that you can't really decide where the definition is there at the moment.
Yeah, it's. I mean, I could very easily imagine it being amateur construction, potentially amateur on its own. I'm not really. I can't think of anything offhand, but dry air or maybe just air. Yeah, it's extremely cryptic. I mean, it's extremely
well, it's not.
Camouflaged.
That's the great thing, Chris. It's not, because what you've done there is you said, look, it could be air, it could be dry air, amateur or amateur construction. Fair enough. But what we have left there is to gather. And what does gather suggest? If that's wordplay,
gathers,
what does it suggest?
It suggests sort of incorporating letters inside another word or collection of letters. Is what it suggests.
Which means that whatever it is for amateur construction, that has to go around something meaning dry. But again, it's grammar and syntax.
Yeah. Or conceivably something around something meaning dry air. But
construction to gather dry air. But have you only got 5 letters in total to play with?
Yeah.
You will have seen the word dry used in cryptic crosswords before.
I'm wondering if this is dry meaning somebody who doesn't drink. So a dry, someone who doesn't consume alcohol, who is a teetotaler, which can be abbreviated TT. And there is a T in the crossword. Oh, sorry, in the fill in the grid. Yeah, I see what it is. Amateur construction could be DIY, do it yourself. So, construction at home. And TT is teetotaler. So here we have amateur construction DIY is gathering TT, a teetotaler, and that is making an air, a ditty. So an air in this case meaning a song, a tune, a sung piece of music, generally speaking. Well, a ditty is typically sung. So anyway, there we have it. That is exactly as I, as I was saying when I was just reading the clue. I mean, you just amateur construction to gather dry air. There is absolutely no part of that whatsoever that suggests a ditty. I mean, just not remotely. So you really, really have to think, how can these words be employed in a way that is not related to their surface read in order to construct an answer?
There's a really lovely definition of cryptic clue writing, which a former editor of the Times, crossword editor of the Times, said to me. There's an annual Times Crossword Championships, which I think currently held in Cheltenham, but they used to be held in London. And as a setter, I went down there on a couple of years. And it was one of the few times that the crossword editor and myself managed to meet up. But he described cryptic clue writing as hiding things in broad daylight. And effectively, that is what we're doing. We are actually giving you the information that you need, but we're just doing it in such a way that we don't want you to see it straight away.
Let's see. What about this one? A single penny's hem covers the lady's skirt. So here's a case where it feels as though it's less likely the beginning of this clue is the definition because of that presence of an A. That just doesn't seem like it's part of a definition to me.
A single. Really what? And it's definitely not a single penny. I mean, how can that ever be
otherwise you would just say penny. That would mean so penny meaning a pinafore potentially. I'm not yet sure what it's doing in this clue. Have I looked at this one yet? No. Magistrate around Christmas heading off for drink. Magistrate around Christmas, heading off for drink. So heading off looks like it's removing the first letter of something to me. That could be removing the first letter from something meaning Christmas. So, Noel or something like that.
It would have to be a short word for
It
Christmas.
would have to be a short word because obviously we only have 5 total letters to work from here. And it looks like something else is going around it. So a magistrate. So basically what this clue looks like to me is that magistrate, probably an abbreviation for a magistrate, is surrounding something that means Christmas minus its first letter, and all of that adds up to a drink or the verb drink or I don't know, some other metaphorical meaning of drink or something like that. So magistrate around Christmas, heading off for drink. I'm just going to put in that OL just because I want to see if that gives me anything. I don't know. What is a magistrate? A justice of the peace? Oh, yeah. So if a justice of the peace is a JP, a drink. Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. So I got this before I worked backwards to the Christmas bit. But a magistrate is a justice of the peace, JP presumably, and then that is going around Yule, Christmas time, YULE minus its heading. Its heading is off to make a drink, a julep, a mint julep, for instance. A classic.
Well done. That's
cocktail.
one of the hardest clues in the grid because it's fairly. I think the answer is a fairly obscure one. You'd have to know your drinks.
I think it's actually, this is a funny case where I think that's probably less obscure to an American, perhaps. Not that
okay.
I don't think ordinary people are going around drinking mint juleps all the time, but it's specifically extremely highly associated with, I think, the Kentucky Derby, which, I mean, I've never been to the Kentucky Derby, but I think the mint julep is kind of an iconic thing in that particular context, and so it's not an everyday thing in the U.S., but it might be, I think, maybe just a bit more, slightly more iconic, perhaps.
You've put a Scrabble letter into that cell with the 21 in it.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, that's a really,
so my instinct is to just hone in on that now. That's a big target.
Yeah. Jerky, Jerry, Jersey's obviously too long. Oh boy, what?
Now there are no plurals in the clue.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's true. Looking like there's definitely not an S at the end.
Yeah, that's a fair point.
So now we've got to try and think of any 5-letter word, J something, R something, something that's not a plural. And it's hard to think of one there isn't a name.
Yeah. Well, there was jerky, which I said, but that which is
or jerky,
which is a food, but that's not, doesn't fit into anything here. Jerry. I mean, Tom and Jerry. Is that a drink? Is a Tom and Jerry a drink? Is that one of those things where that's where the sort of name of the cartoon characters came from, like how Chip and Dale come from Chip and the furniture?
Hey, that's a good. I've never thought. That's a really good approach. I bet that's probably where it came from, where those character names came from.
I'd never thought about it before either, but that is where Chip and Dale come from, for sure. The was it Thomas Chippendale who was the furniture maker, something like that.
So it's back to that thing that you did with what was it? For Good Measure, 13 across.
Yeah. So let me
do the biff and see if you can justify
It's easier when you have the setter of the crossword nudging you along your kind of flights of fancy here, I must admit. Okay, so golf radio host has material about. Well, Oman is a Gulf country. Is that something? Host? Oh, a host is a DJ, a disc jockey. Oh, I see. Oh, is it that we have a sort of imaginary Oman DJ, a Gulf radio host? We almost have a sort of cryptic definition buried inside of the wordplay here. Gulf radio host, Oman DJ, has material about. So in this case, about in that sort of almost Yoda-like way. We're sort of, but I mean perfectly grammatically English. We're taking material about our Oman DJ, and terry, as in terry cloth, is a material, and that is surrounding our Oman DJ and creating an alcoholic drink. Tom and Jerry. Is that actually a rum drink? It's funny that I said rum before, but I think a Tom and Jerry might actually be a rum drink. Itself.
Let me look it up.
So that would be obviously complete coincidence if so, because that has nothing to do with why I was saying rum because of the R and the M.
Apparently, it's hot rum and eggs, spiced and sweetened.
And eggs.
Yeah.
I wonder if maybe it's eggnog or something.
It's classed as kind of punch, apparently.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah. A hot rum toddy with a beaten egg. Do you know what? I don't think I'm going to try one of those.
I might. I'll report back. Let's see. What else can we look at here? Family in yard turned unpleasant. Okay. Well, here's another thing that I wouldn't have started with maybe I would have started with, I don't know, but it's easier to start with this with the crosses. Yard turned. So yard turned could be yard backwards. Family in yard turned unpleasant. There's a few different things here that are sort of different combinations of potential cryptic things going on. So I'm going to write in the thing that I was thinking, which would be yard turned, like upside down, and then family inside of it. So if we had, this doesn't really look like anything though. So then we need family to be inside it, and family would need to be a 3-letter word with N in the middle. I don't really think that's anything, unless family was kin and all of that were turned as an anagram indicator, and then that would be kin, dinkray.
I don't think we allow turned as an anagram indicator because it's so firmly fixed as a reversal.
As a reversal. Okay, yeah. So yeah, to clarify what I'm saying there and what Dean was sort of confirming is turned meaning just reverse the order of the thing. And so I was taking yard and just turning it upside down. Oh no, it's not that. It's not that. It's not that. I had this completely backwards. Family is in fact the definition, and in is just a linking word. And
it's the definition. The answer can be found in this wordplay.
Exactly. And it is yard turned, but not in the way that I thought. So this Y was kind of misdirecting me a bit. The Y actually goes here. And so it's still YD for yard, and that's turned around to make DY. And then we just have a direct swap of unpleasant for nasty, and that results in the answer dynasty, which is a family, as in sort of, a royal house or something, a dynasty. And that is the clue, or that's the answer, I should say. So that was a case where I sort of misdirected myself just based on what I'd had down here. That was kind of, it's not very common in English to have 2 Ys like this in a word. So that was just a case where I was, I was led astray.
And again, it's one of those where I wouldn't say that Y is in any way an unusual letter.
No,
but it's not an R or an E or an S or a T or something like that. So fewer things will fit.
Mm-hmm. So is 19 down? Is this another cryptic definition? I'm wondering.
Oh, I can't tell you.
Okay, right. Well, is it strand?
If it wasn't a cryptic definition, could it be?
Yeah.
Remember, with a very short clue, there's always a chance that it could be a double definition.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. Yes. Okay. So we have a beach, a strand, and then a length, as in, a strand of hair or something. Is that what's going on here?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. And it's a very, very slight misdirection there with beaches having the apostrophe S, because it does look like the possessive, but it just means a beach is length.
Yep. And it would be a bit redundant for a beach's length to all be strand, because you can already sort of communicate beach and strand through, that sense of it just through the beach itself. So there we go. So this looks like arousal. Why is that the case? Result of topless drinking bout. I see why. That's very cheeky. So, wait, but what is the actual definition here? So, result of topless drinking bout. So, I think a topless drinking bout is a carousal, as in you're sort of carousing, you're going out on the town, that kind of thing. And that's
Hmm.
topless. That's topless. So we're removing the first letter, the C, from it, and we're left with arousal.
So if you were in a topless drinking bout, that might
That
potentially
might
cause
cause
a
it,
little
right?
bit
Okay,
of
that's what I was
arousal, wouldn't
wondering.
it?
That's what I was wondering. So is that so? Would you classify this as an andlet, or is
I would call it a semi-andlet
semi-andlet?
because
Okay.
topless drinking bout is enough for carousal.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Oh, I see. Okay.
but you've got that result of. It doesn't matter even if you had a load of wordplay followed by this, and this is had to be put there because the sentence wouldn't be complete without it. But this
Mm-hmm.
can be used to be referring to the answer. We call that a semi-andlet.
Okay.
So anything beyond the pure wordplay is a semi-andlet, and this is a semi.
I see. And just to remind people, because it is sort of a bit of fairly obscure terminology, if you're not familiar with it, and lit means and literal definition, essentially. So
Yeah.
it means that the wordplay is also effectively serving as the definition of
And
the
because
answer.
it's become more popular, maybe we all need to start using all in one, which is more self-explanatory, to be
Yeah.
honest.
All in one clue. Yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. Okay, so what else can I I only have two answers left. Okay. Boy, this has been a marathon though, hasn't it? So it shows one's ready to be taken home. It shows one's ready. Oh, okay. Well, earlier I said ready put me in the mind because of this dough bit from the homophone. I said that ready put me in mind of money, cash, and that makes me think if you imagine something that literally shows your cash to be taken home, it shows the money that you're going to take home with you. That would be your pay slip. So is this just a cryptic definition?
Pure cryptic
Pure
definition,
cryptic
yes.
definition, yeah. So it shows one's ready
And
to be
it
taken
just,
home. Yeah.
yeah, it relies on nothing more than ready
Mm-hmm.
to be deceptive.
Yep. And of course, when you read it, it doesn't it the surface really doesn't suggest what the actual meaning is until you think of it in that alternative manner, and that's getting around. I was sort of fortunate actually that I looked at that right after this bread dough thing because I don't know that I necessarily would have jumped to that, at least not at that, not immediately. So had it not been for that
Yeah,
kind of
and
priming.
the thing I was actually telling a little bit of a lie there when I said that ready was the main deception. It's also one's, because there, if you read it as the clue is trying to make you read it, it shows one is ready.
Yes,
But it
absolutely.
isn't
Yep.
that.
Mm-hmm.
It shows the ready that one
That one
has.
has. Yep, absolutely. That's a very good point. Yep. Yeah, it's sort of it's doubly deceptive in that regard.
Yeah.
So we just have one left here. A single penny's hem covers the lady's skirt. So penny's hem could be the hem, meaning the kind of, I guess almost the skirting, the sort of edge, the edges of penny. So that could be P and Y, and that's already here. I mean, I know I already tried to do that with yard and dynasty, and it was incorrect, but it could be correct in this reading. So what else would that be? So then, penny's hem covers the lady's skirt. So it could be a single penny's hem covers. What is going on here? So
Sometimes I think this is another, see if you can think of something that fits. Bunging first.
Bunging
Because
first,
those,
right?
with the P and the P and the Y, and it's 9 letters as well. There can't be much that fits in there.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like it could be, periphery or something like that.
Okay, try it. It seems likely, doesn't it?
Yeah,
I can't think of anything else that would fit in there.
yeah,
So now we can do this reverse engineering.
yeah. So, okay, well Oh, maybe it's a different PY. Maybe it's this PY. So Penny's hem covers the lady. The lady is her. Um, if you just imagine her as the pronoun. So PY covers the lady is her, and then that would mean Perry is a single. Um, oh, wow. Okay, so A is really the wild card of cryptic clues, I have to say, as far as letters go. So A means per. If you imagine, sort of five a pop, five each, five per.
The easiest way to understand that, probably in the most frequent use of speech, is if you were to say something like it's €2 per gallon.
Absolutely.
€2 a gallon. We would say both equally, wouldn't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. That's exactly right. And then single is just one. Just as we had one meaning I earlier, here we just have single meaning I. And then all of that is skirt. So okay, so there you go. If you imagine the sort of skirt of something as the periphery or almost the perimeter of it, that is the definition. And I think that's the crossword, unless I've made a mistake somewhere.
No, I've been checking it all the way through.
Right.
It's all good.
Well, there we go. Okay, well that was that was a long solve. So I'm obviously no speed solver, especially when it comes to cryptic crosswords. But that was great fun.
I disagree, Chris. Chris, I disagree. Your knowledge is actually quite remarkable. If you've been solving for a year or so, or even less than that, your familiarity with some of the cryptic conventions is actually pretty remarkable.
Oh, thank you. Maybe we can come back and do another one of these, and maybe I can shave that timer time down a bit.
Anyway, I can't thank you enough for this, Chris.
Well, likewise, this is
so enjoyable.
It's been a huge honor to have you here, commenting on your own puzzles. So I would love to do this again. And thank you, Dean, for the probably longer duration of time than you expected to devote to this. But I do appreciate it.
We'll have to do next one. We'll have to do the New York Times in 5 minutes.
Right.
The challenge is on speed running.
Yeah, there you go.
Thank you again, Chris, and thank you to everyone who's watched this and stayed awake.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, take care and talk soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Can I just ask? I'm sorry. I've just been kind of quiet for the past 20 minutes, but.
Oh, hello. Sorry, there's someone in this chat. Recording a video. Sorry about this. Hello.
Oh, you are?
Yep.
I'm sorry.
No worries at all.
I didn't know.
That's okay.